It's going to be a great day in the garden. Today we're doing a cucumber tutorial for beginners. I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to get a ton of cucumbers. And the last tip is backed by multiple scientific studies, and I guarantee that you've never heard it before. So stick around to find out what it is. I've also added timestamps in the description below to help you if you need to go back and rewatch something, or if you want to skip ahead. So let's do it. My name's Eileen, and welcome to the Garden Squared. We're all about organic gardening with less effort and more success. So you want to pick for pickling cucumbers, you want to pick them when they're nice and small so that they stay snappy. For slicers, you want to let them get a little bit bigger. This is a brown Russian cucumber, so it's actually supposed to be brown. This is a slicer, and as you can see, very few spines, if any. And this is an eating cucumber. So what's your favorite way to eat cucumbers? I like to just eat them raw. Now, cucumbers have 2 different kinds of flowers. They have male flowers and they have female flowers. And the way that you tell the difference between a male flower and a female flower is that when you look at the flower tip, the female flowers have a little green future fruit, and then the flowers attached to that. The male flowers don't have any fruit, it's just a flower. The bees take the pollen from the male flower to the female flower and pollinate the future fruit. So cucumbers are in the cucurbit family, and that family includes pumpkins, squash, and zucchinis, as well as cucumbers. In fact, there's actually over 900 species in the cucurbit family, so there's a lot of different cucurbits. When I grow my cucumbers, I always grow them from seed, and I always choose heirloom varieties. That way, at the end of the year, you can pick the best looking plants that produce the most fruit and leave a couple of really nice looking cucumbers on them and let those cucumbers go to seed so you can save them for the next year. Now, a lot of people decide to use hybrid varieties, which is totally fine, but you can't save the hybrid variety seeds. If you do, they will grow, but they won't be the same type of cucumber from the mother plant the year before. I always plant heirloom seeds. That way I can get like a nice free seed crop. And every year that you plant your own saved seeds, you'll get actually better seeds every year. The seeds will get more and more acclimated to your climate. So I love heirloom seeds. And we have a lot of cucumbers. They're just going and going. So when you're sowing your seeds, cucumbers are warm weather plants, so you want to sow the seeds after your last frost. And oftentimes you can get a second succession, so you want to look at the seed packet and it'll say days to maturity. So if it says 60 days to maturity and you have 80 to 90 days left in your growing season before your last frost, you can definitely get a second succession. So a lot of people always say, oh, it's too late to plant new cucumbers, and just do the math. Look at the packet, see how many days to maturity, and then you say, okay, how many days is it until my last frost? And sometimes the last frost is just an estimate. So sometimes the last frost comes a lot later, you never know. So seeds are cheap and they're easy to grow. You just stick them in the ground, so it's definitely worth it to try. So my first tip is to trellis your cucumbers. This will give you a lot more fruit and a lot less space, and it also makes it much easier for you to find the fruit once it's on the vine. So what I did was I planted the seed directly against the trellis, and then as the plants got big, I just pulled the leaves through the spaces in the fencing. Now this fencing was really easy to make. What we did was we took T-posts, which you can see one here. We took the T-posts and then we spray painted it black so that it was like harder to see and a little bit easier on the eye. And then this is just a 50-foot length of 5-foot fencing that we got from Lowe's. And then we just zip tied them to the T-post. We pounded the T-posts in after we spray painted them, and then we zip tied the fence to it. So this is really strong, and we spaced the T-posts probably 6 or 7 feet apart, so that way they're really sturdy. So here's a T-post, here's the corner T-post, and here's another T-post here. So This makes it so much easier to find the fruit, and it was really easy to trellis these. Like I said, I just pulled them through the fence spaces when they were small, and then the cucumbers just climbed the rest of the way on their own. So it was really, really easy. So if you're having trouble getting them to stay on the fence, you can always use twine or string or something. Just make sure that you don't pull it too tight so that it cuts into the stems. So my second tip is pick the cucumbers more often. In annual vegetables, the plant's one and only purpose in life is to make seeds for the next year. So if you pick the cucumbers early and often, just like peas and a lot of other annual vegetables, the plant will keep producing and producing and producing, because what it wants to do is it wants to make seeds. So when it's time to pick the cucumbers, here's a good sized cucumber, and you can just twist it. But what I do so that I don't damage the plant is I actually just take clippers and I clip it off. So there's gonna be some spines on it. And also this little part at the end, that's the old flower. That's where the flower came from. So remember, on a female flower, it's the fruit and then the flower is at the end. And having a basket like this when you're harvesting your vegetables makes it so much easier, because then you have like a dedicated container and you're just easy to carry, and just as you pick, you just put it into the basket. So we love this basket. And now for my final tip, and that tip is add calcium to your soil in the form of either bone meal or chelated calcium. Chelated calcium is calcium that's in a form that your plants can readily absorb. In other words, it's already bioavailable, so the plants can just uptake it. It doesn't need the biology to break it down first. So that's chelated calcium. Or you can always add bone meal. If you're gonna add bone meal, add it in the beginning of the season and the middle of the season to carry your plants to the end. So when we're talking about why is calcium so important for your plants, there's been multiple studies, I've linked them in the description below, but when we're talking about calcium, we need to learn two words: auxins and cytokines. Cyto-whatins? Auxins? What? Auxins and cytokines. So calcium is a regulator of an auxin, and what auxins are is that it's the hormone that produces shoot tip growth. So as the plant branch grows out, those are auxins that are regulating that growth. Now cytokines are the hormones that produce fruit, so they're reproductive hormones. So they help produce fruit and also root growth. Now, if there's not enough calcium in the soil, you want to think about calcium as being the thermostat that controls the auxins to the cytokines. We want these two hormones to be in balance. So if there's not enough calcium in the soil, the auxins, it gets too much. And what it does is that it goes down into the plant roots and it stops root development. And then the cytokines, there's not enough of it, and so your plant stops producing plants, and you get really heavy top growth and the root system stays really small, so your plant's not balanced. So you want the top portion of the plant to be the same, if not a little bit smaller than the bottom root system of the plant. And so calcium is a regulator of auxin, so that's the number one reason why it's important. The second reason why calcium is so important is because another thing that calcium does is that it firms up the cell walls. Now, the cucurbit family is prone to powdery mildew. Everybody always complains about, oh, my plants have powdery mildew, and that's because they need a lot of calcium. You think about how much a cucumber and a squash and your zucchini plants are just producing so much fruit. They're using all this calcium. When there's no more calcium left, suddenly your plant's covered in powdery mildew. And so if you add calcium midway through the season in the form of either bone meal or chelated calcium, then the cell walls of the plants won't let the fungus penetrate them. So it firms up the cell walls so that it's a really strong, impenetrable layer and the fungus can't get through. So just to sum it up, calcium is important for fruit production, for root growth, and also to prevent powdery mildew. I like to just eat them raw. I'm stuck. Was that vicious? Mm-hmm. Should I not have done that?